Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is OctoMan, and today we are going to continue. I'm going to continue the Burntime 3D in Unity. So we are going to continue whatever we have started. Of course, in the last video, in the last stream, we were basically struggling with the area switching, like between buildings and the actual area 001, basically, and all this workflow, like where we can load and unload scenes between like whenever we need them or even not. We also struggled with how we can save the player information, like where the player has been, if there is or was a player active. And today, I'm not quite sure what we're going to do, but I guess we're gonna start to work on the character stats itself. But as always, before we are going to go into it and start the actual yeah, content over here, I want to give you the chance to check out the description box down below where you can grab your free PDF about 3 strategies how to finish your game today or even tomorrow. Or even anyhow and anytime. And also check out all the links below in the description box about all my content, all my courses I already have available for you. So if you like to just join one or the other course if you want to learn something new today or even tomorrow. So let's get into it. So what did we actually have done so far? We created some kind of an enemy behavior, I would say. We're gonna created some kind of a merchant already, and we have a player we can move around in our scene. Now we can also move inside buildings. We don't do much inside at the moment, but later on we're gonna put items into and stuff like that. We're gonna talk about this once this is becoming available or necessary. But for the moment, I want to talk about the character itself. And as already spoken about that, a player is going to have some kind of inventory. We're going to take a look into the inventory later on, as well as we're going to have a world space inventory when wherever we are currently are, we want to drop items onto the ground, giving some, let's say, yeah, whatever, like a stone or any kind of a prefab, put it there. Whenever we interact with the prefab we have dropped there, or whatever it is, then, or like a bag or whatever, then we're going to be able to interact with the world space inventory, drag items later on also inside our inventory slots, and so on and so forth. But for the moment, that is not necessary. For the moment, we want to have, or we want to create the base of that. So meaning we're going to take a look into how we can create an actual character over there. How do we put EXP inside? How we do vitality, hunger, how we decrease hunger as well as the water, and so on and so forth. How long or how much days we're gonna have left? How can we actually fill these up, as well as what is probably the maximum we can hold on the character, and probably do differences between specific characters. We have multiple possibility to set this one up. We can also make use of a character select later on, so whichever the character is we are going to start. Maybe we're gonna have some presets where we're gonna have like different icons over here to pick from with left and right choosing this one, and probably we're gonna put some basic items into these presets here as well. So for the moment, we're gonna take a basic look into this part. We can already start to design the inventory itself over here and take a look into hunger, water, vitality, EXP, as well as the name, and probably some fancy item or icon of the character itself. I'm gonna later on go into and design some things for that, but for the moment, it's not really necessary. So let's hop into this. So where do we want to show our actual inventory? And now you're gonna, if you have seen the last one, you probably think, okay, we might want to go to the actual main scene and put like any content we need about the items we need about the character probably in here. And you're kind of right. Why? Because this main scene basically contains the current running day, and also we want to make sure that the actual game manager or whoever is inside the main scene, because it's always present, we want to also handle items as well as everything else necessary for the characters later on. The character select is probably not going to be part of it, but I will think about it meanwhile we are going through that. So how do we build up the idea behind this? We have like two possibilities. We can just create a class which is holding the information, and we're gonna store the class somewhere with all its information. Like later on when we wanna, for example, load the information back into, then we can just, store the class into, I don't know, any place, and later we load back the information from the save file into this. So we need to make sure that we only store like things, simple things like simple variable strings, floats, bool, or even integers inside. And same for vectors. If we need to store information about the position, of course we need to split the vector later on into three different floats and stack them together. But we don't go this far, at least not for the moment. So, and based on the character design or the character setting, we have two possibilities. Again, we're going to create once again this class, or we can also create some kind of a scriptable object. And I believe that is going to be the thing we are going to take care of over here. So we basically create scriptable objects like for multiple things. Scriptable objects for items, scriptable objects for characters, and so on. And later on we're going to combine those. So how do we do this and how do we combine them? I'm gonna meanwhile clean up hopefully quite a bit. So I'm gonna make everything about characters into a characters folder over here so it's easier later on to access and understand and find out. So when I now create a new C# script, I can name this something like a base character. So every character which we create is going to inherit later on base character, or probably we just name it character, like this. And once it has been loaded, we're gonna wait for the compiler, of course, and then we open this one up in MonoDevelop, Visual Studio, or whatever IDE you are using. So I'm gonna double click that, and we are good to go. So once that has been loaded, we want to get rid, at least for the moment, for a certain update, because actually we don't need those inside this class. Also, what we want to derive from is maybe not mono behavior, but a scriptable object. So I'm going to double click that and rename this one to be scriptable object. So scriptable object is nothing else than a class, but we can actually create multiple files for multiple characters with multiple items, settings, icons, whatever sounds, whatever we need. We can all store this in a scriptable object, and the system is going to store this as an as or like an asset. And we can later on just load and unload these assets whenever we need to, and we can load the correct settings based on the setting of our scriptable object. To do all of that, we want to make sure that we have a possibility to create a scriptable object. So we need to do something like create asset menu. And in here we can now define the file name as well as a kind of a folder structure where we want to actually create all of that. So we can do something like file name equals, and then in quotes we're gonna give it something like a new character. So this is just a basic character over here, new character. Can type today as always character, and then we can also say something like comma menu name, this one, menu name equals, and then we can put something like about the game itself, something like maybe the base name of that, something like Burntime, which is going to be my project. Then we can put a slash, and then we can say something like characters or whatever. So this is going to be like a sub-menu creation, and we're gonna create a new character whenever we call the create asset menu based on the Burntime / characters over here. We can later on also define other scriptable objects, which are going to be for items, consumables, whatever it is, and we basically do the same. We just later on need to create slots where we can store all the items into, and also count up if it is necessary. So our character needs to hold later on all the items and so on and so forth. Next one is we want to create now everything I showed already inside the in here. Like we need a name, We need a sprite or image over there. We're gonna take a look into vitality. So how can we store this information? We can basically do something with integers. Hey, E-rolls, thanks a lot for tuning in. And same for hunger and water. And then we later on just read the information from the scriptable object wherever we have that based on our current settings. And then we just read it and interact with that whenever necessary. So that's what we're gonna start first. We're gonna create a new name basically, or a string, and we can do the or make it or name it name. But as you can see, this one here is going to be already taken, so we probably need to say something like public new string name, so we don't get an intersection because name already exists overall inside the Unity engine. So we need to make sure that this is not called new string name over here. Next one is now we have the name, or probably we're gonna later on put an icon somewhere or an like a sprite. So we can say something like public sprite. We can store all this information later on inside the scriptable object. So we just set it up once and we can always read it, take from it, and update it accordingly. There are some things we need to take in consideration later on when it comes to the actual inventory item or the item holding and stuff, because this asset will basically also be some kind of a local storage, and so later on we need to load from our save file whatever we had inside and then update this particular scriptable object save file from wherever point we want to. So we have a public sprite, so that's basically our our icon or the actual image of our character. So now we're gonna get the stats about that. We can do the stats into also other scriptable objects and just drag them in by giving it a name and as well as a value, or we just define them directly inside the character. But each character basically has these stats, so we don't need to put multiple things over there. So in here we're gonna now say something like public, and now we're gonna take an integer for exp, for experience points. Then we're gonna have another public int for our what is it called? I don't know, I forgot it. Let's take a look. For vitality. So we can name it vit or vitality. You can type it out if you want to. We can say here experience. Basically, it doesn't matter. And now we're gonna get the actual things about hunger. Is there anything else? Yep. So now we get hunger. So public int hunger, and we're gonna have public int. And in this case, it's going to be water. So how much we're gonna be able to drink over here. So each character needs to have at least this information, like a name, an icon, then experience and vitality. So how much health is basically left. We can also, like any time, comment things out if we don't know what it is about. And we can also define some maximum values. For example, maximum hunger could be something like 9 or 10 or 5 days. So we cannot overeat basically. So these can be also, they don't necessarily have to be public. So we can set them basically in private. So int max hunger. And we can do the same with the water. So int max water. I'm not quite sure if they are later on accessible. And those are, let's see. Okay, nothing about it. So I'm gonna put a 9 over here. So a maximum of 9 days is going to be set over here. Once again, we can later on make them also public and set them up per character different if necessary. So I'm gonna save this, and now we should be able to create our own character. And whenever we do any script changes, all deriving scriptable objects from character will automatically update as well. So whenever I put something in here, like when we eat, as an example, we're gonna create some food or some eating or just making use of functionality, then we can literally update this scriptable object in all deriving characters, like based on the character class over here, will actually update here as well. So, and that's what we're gonna take a look into just a second. So let's create a character first, so you get an idea what a character really is about. We let the compiler run first, so we see if there are any issues in the console, if there are any problems or stuff like that. Doesn't seem so. There are some things which are assigned but never used. That's okay, at least for the moment. Later on, we're going to update that. So now we can go here into the Create Asset menu, Burntime, Characters. And I can create now a new character. That is the file main menu name. And I can name this character now whatever I like to. And I can build like 20 different presets for characters. Once again, when I later on put in like items, like preset items into item slots, we don't have them yet, but we later on might take a look into, then we're gonna have the possibility to manage them all directly inside this scriptable object. So this character can be any name. Let's name him John. It can be male, can be female, doesn't matter. And so I just gave the name over here, but that doesn't mean that this name is going to be set to be John. So we can do this here as well. We're gonna usually start with something like a 0 experience. Maybe we're gonna start with 70 in vitality, so 100 is going to be maybe the maximum vitality. With hunger, we're gonna set maybe to 5 or 3 days to start with. So this is basically now our preset for everything over there. It's basically nothing else than a class which we set up based on a, an inherited class, so where all the stats are going to be set beforehand. Once again, we can now put in the icon or a sprite over here, like from the face, and later on we can show this information based on the current character. So what we now can do is we can combine or connect our character. Once again, we can always go here, create a new character, and can name this, I don't know, Jenny. And Jenny, of course, gets her name, gets 0 experience, probably starts with another vitality over here, so we can preset like multiple characters at this point. She can maybe start with 70 hunger, or no, not 70, but maybe 4 days instead of 5, and so on and so forth. So we can preset like multiple hundreds of characters at the or in the end over here. Once again, we only play with one character at all, but later on we can switch through them, through the scriptable object, by selecting the character at the very beginning and make sure that we load the correct stats to our character and store them somewhere later on. Or we can also write into them, but probably we want to avoid that. We'll see that later on when it comes to saving and loading content. So basically our scriptable objects now hold locally or hold currently just this information, whatever we have set them to, and we can make use of them. So, and now we just need to have a connection to somewhere where we can show all this information about. So we can put this like it maybe directly into the day part, like in the day canvas, but I guess we're gonna put it extra. So this canvas or the panel about all this information from the character may be on another panel at all. So we can do the design directly over here. So we create a new, we can make use of an image or panel or whatever. Once again, we don't go over design too much. I'm gonna go into 2D mode, and basically I try to match the same idea I had like over here. So I want to have a sprite over here, the name, exp, vitality, text fields over there, and probably 6 or 8 item slots later on, and enough space for the world space inventory later on. So because that's the only thing we're gonna see probably later on, we don't have the world space inventory, or not always, so we might change the look of that in the end. So basically this setting might be the first part, and this one is just an extra. We can later on blend in, blend out without this side over here. Same for trading later on. As you can see, we probably want to make this load, and the other side gets loaded from the merchant we are talking to. And over here we basically can do the same, but in that case we don't need to actually access the vitality, hunger and water at the first place if not necessary, but we'll see that whenever it comes to this point. So what we can do is we can take literally the center line over here from the canvas, and we can bring this icon or this image over here and scale this up until we like hit the actual left side border over there. So this can be yeah, done in multiple ways. We want to make sure that this field is basically always scaling to the correct size over here. So we need to make sure that scale screen size is on, as well as that these anchor points over here are going to fit the size of our image over there. So no matter where we are, no matter where that thing is, we want to make sure that the left side, like the complete inventory part or the whatever the settings are, is going to stay over here. We can name this whatever we want. Once again, we can go later on fancy with design and stuff, but for the moment, it's not really necessary. So this is going to be my character window or something like that. We can later on just hide and unhide that whenever we want to see this content. So because this canvas is always active, we just deactivate and activate the character info window whenever we necessarily have to do so. Now we need to have like up to 4 slots at the bottom, but first we want to take a look into the actual icon field as well as the stats we just created before, and because we didn't create the slots for the inventory at the moment. So so we don't go, or probably for the moment we don't go over to this. So I create another UI image over here, and this is going to be my icon, so the character icon. I'm gonna tint it for the moment black so we can see it easier. Probably the white is a bit too white. Maybe we want to make it a bit grayish over here, so to get some nice look. Once again, we can make this big and small, whatever we like and please. We always need to take care of that we are in the correct resolution, and later on these things are not scaling too fancy overall. So maybe I'm gonna make it something like 150 by 150. It can be bigger or smaller later on. Once again, not completely necessary. What we also want to have as a part of the character window are the four or five text fields based on the infos, like once again the name, the vitality, the XP, as well as hunger in days and hunger and water in days. So we're gonna create now a new UI text. You can also make use of Text Mesh Pro if you really want to or need to. We want to make something like maybe best fit over here, tinted super black so we can read it good later on, as well as maybe we're gonna make it bold. Not necessarily, but we can do so. I'm gonna stretch that a bit more far to the left. And maybe I'm gonna shrink it down just a small bit so we have more space for the name. So we can do something like name colon, and then we're gonna put later on code-wise the name over here. Something like Jenny. We can also get rid of name colon because we maybe just want to see the name over here. Basically, it doesn't really matter. We're gonna decide this later on whenever we fill this information by code. So this is going to be our name text. Once again, make sure everything is named 100% as it should. We're gonna duplicate this, Control D as usual, and this one is going to be now our what was it, exp text, like so. And in here will be something like a 0% or something like that, or maybe even more info. We need something like exp colon 0%. So we later on have the possibility to put our like everything inside that, like, you know, the experience points into. I'm not quite sure how we're gonna make use of the experience points. Well, at least not for the moment, but later on we might find a good solution for that. Next one is going to be our vitality, so we can name it vit or vitality because we have more than enough space over here. Also, I'm gonna give that as percentage. Once again, we can also name this one health or whatever it is. Completely, again, up to you. Gonna duplicate this once again and bring this down below. So this is going to be our hunger, and we want to see that something like in 5 days or 4 or 5 days we're gonna have food left basically. And we're gonna do the same. I'm gonna duplicate it once again. Well, it didn't do it, so I'm gonna duplicate that, bring it downwards, and rename this one to be water 5 days. So for the moment, so we see if the design fits, if we like that as it looks, as well as if we have more than enough space in the bottom, if the size of the text fields are good and big enough basically, so we can keep track on that. Also, I want to make sure that I rename like all the text fields over here. So this is going to be the vitality text. This one is going to be our hunger text. Once again, always make sure naming convention is king, so everybody knows what these text fields are about later on, also when we connect our scriptable objects with that, so like the output to the character window, so we can update it accordingly whenever we do changes, and so on and so forth. So we just once again read the data later on from the scriptable object back and forth into that and update it accordingly whenever necessary, basically, like whenever we load or open the character window, that everything gets updated to whatever currently is at this point. Water, water text basically. Okay, so since we have that out of the way, we can now make sure, try to anyhow find a way to connect our scriptable object with that. I don't have any nice image over here, so probably I go and create some super simple icon for that. Maybe also over here, gonna be super simple, no worries. And you can do this however you like. I don't cover too much of that over here, so I go and just fill that up quite a bit, increase opacity. Once again, that is nothing fancy over here. I don't go and cover anything of that because I don't see a point, at least not for the moment. I'm gonna do some rip away over here, maybe something like that. Well, nope. Maybe there's something like that. Gonna fill this blank, and maybe gonna make the poor, oops, that a bit more roundish over here. It will be, once again, will be super ugly, but it doesn't matter. It's just for testing purposes, so we see that the icon gets loaded whenever necessary. So I'm gonna make a difference over here, so it's looking like a paper bag or something. Gonna make some eyes or some I don't know, things here like this. We don't need anything much over there, just a just something like that probably, and that should be basically everything we need. We're gonna be able to do something else if really necessary. I don't know, maybe not too shabby. We can also make this in any color. I don't know what looks nice. Maybe red. Not really, I guess. Looks too spooky. So maybe I'm gonna make it just gray or whatever. Or maybe in like skin color, and then we later on put some eyes into it. But once again, it doesn't really matter at this point. Maybe the black ones can be a darker brown. Maybe like that. Yeah, why not? So now I just render this one out, or just export this image to wherever I need this. I'm gonna bring this over here, go to my folder where I have my project inside, and export this as a sprite to it, or PNG, whatever. So I'm gonna export this directly in my textures folder. Gonna name this, I'm gonna make sure that, damn it, I believe I need to change this to selection. I need to change the size later on. So I'm gonna just name it icon and make it a selection, and make this maybe 250 pixels or something. Maybe a bit bigger later on is necessary, but we don't really care about this at the moment. And I'm gonna export this into my project right now. Good. So in textures, I should see this icon right now. I can now go to GUI, no, not GUI, but sprite to DUI, and apply the changes. So everything which has been transparent in my program is also transparent over here. And the nice thing about it is now I can take this icon sprite and put this directly into Jenny or John or whoever has a sprite icon over here. So, and it's going to store this automatically inside this asset, so we don't need to do anything. We just drag the icon into the sprite slot and we are good to go. We can also do some create some preview for the icon, but it's not really necessary at this point. So I'm gonna skip that part over here because it will involve editor scripting, which is once again not necessary at this point. If you want to learn this, you can take a look into my idle course about idle games. There I'm gonna cover, or discover editor scripting for icon previews and stuff like that in scriptable objects. So now what we need to do is we need to connect now our actual scriptable object or even the game manager with all this information about that over here. So probably we're gonna do this like in not in a scene handler, but maybe in an extra script. So which is actually taking care of, okay, a day has passed, we're gonna eat and food and stuff like that, and we're gonna need to have a connection to our character to update like days and vitality, XP, as well as the name and so on and so forth, or any of these text fields, as well as the correct icon. And later on, when we have like merchants or enemies or whoever we are talking to, we can always load the icon from the scriptable object whoever we are talking to, and then we can just update everything accordingly onto the right side of the screen, because later on we're gonna have like multiple scenes open over here, or multiple screens basically. So what would I do? Probably I'm gonna create a new C# script. Maybe that's going to be really my game manager over here. So the game manager takes care of the game mechanics itself and probably stores some random or basically some necessary informations about it. Once the compiler has been uh, run over here, I'm gonna put this also onto my game manager part over here and double click to open. Once again, in Mono, develop Visual Studio or whatever IDE you're using. Once it has been loaded, we can start with some random settings basically. We can, for the moment, create a public character, and so we can now drag our preset character directly inside the slot over here. We can name this character with a small c or whatever. Later on, we can we basically load the informations about the character directly into the slot. So whatever we choose, we just put it into the slot, and we have now the connection to each item or each public variable over here, and we can read the data from it or even put data into it if necessary. So what we want to do is whenever our daytime is basically done, we want to talk to the game manager and update the character. And to do so, we first off need to have an open connection to our game manager class. In this case, we create a new public static game manager instance as usual. Now we can talk to it, but before we can do this, we need to create a new void awake method over here. So we actually set the instance to be the only instance in the game. So instance is equal to this. So now we can talk to it by just calling GameManager.instance, and now we can, for example, read directly from character all its stats or whatever to update this by our daytime, or whenever daytime has been passed, like we created this one beforehand, then like when our time is basically 0 and we are switching to a new day, we send just an information to the game manager over here and say, hey, update our character accordingly. So we and see if there is enough food left. Otherwise, he will basically starve, and when he starts to starve, we're gonna reduce the vitality by whatever percentage. Same for water. If we don't have any water and we are like 2 days above it or something, then we'll reduce probably the vitality by 60%. If the vitality is down to 0, we are basically game over. So that's the idea behind that. So we may basically create a survival game, as you probably know that the game already. I don't know. So what we can do is we can also read now the information or put the information into the corresponding slots of our actual character settings. I'm gonna make some commands over here. So maybe this is our character, let's say window. So this is, we now need to have a connection to our window itself. So a public game object character window. We can later on, or we will later on, have connections to our, the like the other guys. We're gonna create other windows as well, depending on however we wanna make use of that. And the character window now contains, once again, it contains the icon, text, and all these 5 text elements like name text, EXP, vitality, hunger, and water. I want to make sure that we create all the connections to that, probably for the moment inside the game manager, later maybe inside somewhere else. So we're gonna have like an icon, and the icon is of type sprite over here, and the sprite can be loaded directly once again and set from the character, but we need to create the character connection first. So, or the connection to the sprite field, otherwise we cannot load the correct information about it inside this particular field. So, and same for a later on, we're gonna have like a trade window or merchant window or enemy window or whatever windows we need, and we just create some connections to that, so we can read maybe yeah, all the possibilities to that. So if there's like another character which is once again of type merchant, we can put them or him on the second window basically, and so on and so forth. And of course we can read and update the information directly inside. So this is our character icon or a character sprite. Basically all these are the just the fields where the things are going to be connected to. Then we have text, and as you can see, text is not available, so we need to implement the namespace using the Unity engine.ui. So otherwise we don't have access to text elements or even image elements if necessary. So now we should have the possibility to write a big one. Yep, there we go. So we have now multiple texts. We have the name text. We're gonna have public text. What was the first one? EXP text. The order doesn't matter over here, but once again, naming convention is king. Then we're gonna have the vitality text. I'm gonna name it maybe just vit text. We're gonna have a public text. In this case, it's going to be our, I believe, hunger text. And the last one should be the water text. So public text, water text. And what we now can do is whenever we open the actual character window, we're gonna bring all the information, anything we want, directly. We read it from the character and put this into the corresponding slots. So we create a new helper function for that. We're gonna find a way later on to trigger that on the correct way. Like whenever we hit a specific button, we're gonna show the inventory or show the window itself, and then we load the corresponding necessary windows. Like also when we are clicking on a world icon or world item on the ground, like when there's an items, you know, or anywhere in the scene, we click on that, then we know, okay, we need to create a icon, or one of the right side is going to be a world inventory, so we can drag the information later on directly into our currently active character if necessary. Maybe later on we're gonna create something, a localized character, but we'll see about that once we are at this point. Because saving and loading, whenever we update this one, it will be overwritten. So we probably need to have a space holder later on where we just copy the data into the new character first, like after we are done with choosing it from a already created prefab, I would say. So, and probably also we're gonna, you know, put the name by ourselves later on by using an input field and so on and so forth. Once again, this is not necessary at the moment. So let's assume we wanna show the character window, and update all the necessary information about it. So first we want to unhide the character window itself. So we say character window dot set active to be true. This is going to happen all in a split second, so we're going to update this accordingly based on the character sprites we want to load and so on and so forth. Now we're going to go and update the window with all its information, like with all the connections to the character sprite, for example. So character sprite is going to be equal to our, in this case we now load the information from character, so gonna copy that here, character dot, and now we're gonna have the icon over here. So the character icon should now be loaded inside this sprite one. Next is going to be the name text. So name text dot text is equal to, and now once again we're gonna load the information from our current character dot, and now we're gonna pick the name. And we're gonna do the same for the EXP, the vitality, the hunger, and the water. So in that case, once again, we're gonna say EXP text dot text is equal to character dot experience. Maybe there's a typo. An int cannot be put into a string, so we need to convert this experience now into a string. So we say dot to string, open close parentheses, and maybe we want to put a plus colon space percentage sign over here. So we can now define it how we want to really show it, and we want to show the integer as a string parameter with a percentage sign behind it. If we are implementing a string over here, we usually do not need to convert the integer into a string, because it will automatically convert it into a string as soon as we put a string parameter behind it. I'm gonna copy that line because we're gonna have multiple other ones here as well. In this case, it's going to be our vitality text, and we're gonna take our vitality from here and put this into a percentage. Once again, something between 0 and 100. We will never see 0 because we're gonna end the game before the character can see the 0 over here, but you know, you get the idea. So same for hunger. So we have a hunger text. The text is going to be our character dot hunger, and in here we don't want to have percentage, we want to see days. So we're gonna put in plus days. So 5 days, 2 days, whatever. And we want to always, decrease the hunger and the water text, or the water itself, based on the character settings anytime we are going to update the day. Once again, we're going to do this later on. So, and finally, we want to update the water text from our character water and show this in days here as well. Don't forget to save, and basically instead we can try to show the character window and update it accordingly. So we can debug that instantly in any way actually. So in here we just call the function show character window, and that should be it. Now we just need to fill the connections to all these fields, like to the sprite fields, the character window, the name text, and so on. If you want to make it a bit more appealing or a bit more, let's say, visible, we can always make use of headers, because the header is going to give us the possibility to have some spaces, some bold text, and so our game manager gets clean, or is going to be clean enough, so we know everything about the character, let's say, settings or setup or whatever, or connections is, or window, maybe window is going to be better. Everything about the character window is probably gone or coming like after this one, and we can make use of multiple headers later on. We can make use of spaces and all the other content over here. So we should now wait for the compiler, and we're gonna see now we have this character window. This is the header we created beforehand. This can only be created above a public variable. About a private one, it should not work. Now we want to connect our player, like our character. I'm gonna lock the symbol right now, so we're gonna be able to go through the character scripts. I'm gonna pick John and bring this over here, and now we're gonna connect the character window, which is this one. I'm gonna connect the character sprite, or in this case it's going to be the icon, but as you can see, we cannot make use of that as an icon, so we need to rename this one into an image. So instead of having a sprite over here, we need to take image like that, and now we need to make sure that the character sprite dot sprite is going to be equal to the character icon. Don't forget to save. Let's go back and let the compiler run. Once it's done, we should be able to put the image, like the icon image, directly in the slot. Works good. Now we take the name text, exp text, just top to bottom, vitality text, And here you see that naming convention is absolute king. Otherwise, we might struggle with setting this one up as is. And now, when we are, for example, we can now unhide this or hide this, not the game manager, but the character window. Whenever I put the lock symbol away, I'm gonna deactivate it. Whenever we now press play, we should see this one popping up, and it gives us now, as you can see, the name John, 0% of our experience, 70% in days, in vitality. I'm gonna update this in a second. 5 days in hunger and 5 days in water. And what I don't know is why this is going to be black, but we'll find out in a second. I believe it's because of our icon over here is black instead of white. So white will be then 100% however it looks. Probably we're gonna put a border around it, so or like a background behind it. That might make more sense over here. So I'm gonna quickly redesign that, or maybe update it. So I duplicate icon, bring this on top, make this maybe a slight bit bigger, like 160 by 160. Make it black, so I have like a border sitting around it. And gonna make this icon now child of that icon. So this is my border on, and this is going to be my icon. So in the game manager, the icon should be still this one, so we can see the image. What we now need to have is the string parameters about the XP, vitality, hunger, and water in front of our informations. Like we're gonna have like everything behind that, but we don't have it in front, so we don't know what they are about. So we're gonna change that. So we put quotes, exp colon space, and after the second quote gonna put a plus, so it's get added. So this one gets added, then this one, then this one. Same here, we're gonna put quotes, vitality or health, whatever you like, vitality colon space, after the second quote another plus, and there we go. And the final step is going to be the character.hunger and the water.hunger, water dot some, yeah, so the hunger first, so hunger in quotes space, maybe also colon, and then a plus between, and the last one is going to be our water, colon space, and the plus in between. Don't forget to save. And let's go back and let the compiler run. And as you can see now, we're gonna have like the name Jenny in here. We don't have any image, but when we now press play, we're gonna see now our sadly now stretched item or icon. We're gonna see our name. We're gonna see the current EXP, the vitality, and the hunger in 5 days, and the water in 5 days. So pretty good. The reading now works, so we can actually update also backwards. We can always write inside the scriptable object and update the data accordingly, but later on we maybe don't want to do this directly as that, and we're gonna find a way later on to update the icons and stuff like that accordingly by using, for example, IDs and reading the IDs from another extra content script or something where all the icon or where all the items are going to be listed from top to bottom, maybe the icon connected to it as well as an ID, and then we just drag things around. So we're gonna loop through that and update the inventory according to whatever has been stored in the slots. But that is everything we need basically to show everything about the characters itself. So we can once again now put Jenny inside and see if that makes any difference, and it should, because it has different possibilities over here. So as you can see, Jenny has 4 days of hunger, 4 days of water, 80 vitality, and of course has another name over here as well. And Jenny does not contain any sprite. So as you can see, if there's no information filled into, we can give Jenny any other, any other name. We can, or another icon over here. We can put a paper bag like the other one I created over here, but put some lipstick on it. So we're gonna have basically Jenny being super awesome, kissy lips over there. So we see, okay, she's going to be our girl over here. Gonna put that together pretty quick. So nothing to worry about. Gonna make them super red. like that, and I'm gonna just duplicate it and flip it over and drag it here. Oh, there's a small gap. So no worries once again about the graphics. Or I don't cover too much into this part, especially not because that doesn't have any, impact at the moment, but we can differentiate between the multiple things. So I'm gonna name this icon maybe female for the moment, and I'm gonna keep I believe the size was about the same, 250 of something, I don't know. And I just hit export and go back over here in my textures folder. I should now have the icon female. I'm gonna be able to load the sprite or make it a sprite to the UI, apply the changes so it gets cut it off correctly, and we can now give Jenny the icon. So I go to Jenny, textures, and give her icon female like this. And when we now press play, we should see the Jenny icon going to happen over here once again. John does have the other icon without any lips, as you have seen before, like from this other icon over here without anything. And that's how you can simply just put graphics around and update the the actual prefabs, or in this case the actual scriptable objects over here. So, and there's one more thing I want to go over inside the icon. I want to make sure that this for the moment gets a basic icon, and I want to keep on, or want to enable preserve aspect ratio. So, and this is just to make sure that these icons later on are not going to be stretched whenever they are like smaller or bigger or whatever. So they are going to keep their aspect ratio over here. Once again, you can, and I believe you can now get rid of the icon, because I wanted to make sure that I have this option, otherwise I don't have it. So let's make it none and see if it still now works. Yep, now it keeps preserve aspect ratio over here, as you can see, and Jenny has now a pretty much unstretched icon, as well as when once again we are going to make use of John. So we go into our scripts, characters, and fill John into our character slot over here and press play. Then it should load John correctly in here as well with all its necessary data. And that's everything I wanted to cover in this tutorial series. So now we can basically read information or actually grab information from and to this current scriptable object. Later on, we once again need to define a way how to send data back and forth, like when we take damage, that will also decrease the vitality and so on and so forth. We're going to update the scriptable objects by time, because once again we're gonna define the things completely over here. Hi Spoko, what are you waiting for? Epic War Saga? Do you wait for videos about the game? Because on this channel I only stream Unity content, and I'm not quite sure if you mean me to create Epic War Saga tutorials. I mean, the game is rather old already, and I see. Well, yeah, I'm not. Currently, I don't really create any Epic War Saga content, because it's, once again, I put this all over onto my other channel, like all the I believe the rest of my videos, or the latest videos I was creating beforehand, but I don't think I can actually offer that at the moment. I don't have the time to play the game, or even get content together for Epic War Saga in this case. And I believe a lot of strategies have been discovered already, so it shouldn't be too hard to find out what's going on or what to go after. So I believe we are done for today. So I had created now a scriptable object for the character class. I can later on also inherit this character class if necessary, as well as I can once again create merchants for that, can give them also names, can give them later on when we are starting to create items, item slots, inventories and stuff like that. Then we are going to update the actual scriptable objects over here, and in the end we're gonna have, like, hopefully later on, a fluid system where we can, push data back and forth. So if you guys have any questions, now is the time to do so. Otherwise, don't forget to check out my description box down below, where you can grab your free PDF about 3 strategies how to finish your game, as well as, yeah, quite some good amount of courses you can actually grab. So if you want to learn something new today or even tomorrow, check out all my courses down below in the description box. Otherwise, thanks a lot for tuning in. Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them right now or even later, doesn't really matter for me. But I believe we discovered quite some content already today, and yeah, that's it so far. No questions, that's good. So no worries about it. Thanks a lot once again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the stream, and probably see you in the next live stream about how to create Burntime 3D in Unity. Once again, thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this one, and see you hopefully in the next live stream. Bye bye.